carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Randy Nance, back home in Texas, combat wounded Green Beret, and our good friend in Arizona, Jeff MD, 26 years, CIA case officer, affectionately known in our circles as 007. So, quick question for you two. When Khalid and I wrote this 144 episode series, of course, we couldn't have planned that the topic tonight, sanctuary strongholds resisting feds, would fall on the same day that an ICE officer almost gets run over and has to shoot somebody. What are the chances? Divine intervention? If you think that's divine intervention, you're in the audience, put a 1 in the live chat. Just let us know. All right. So before we jump into the conflicted question, I want to mention something else as well. The author of this book, Francis, came to me about a year ago, and he asked me if he could have a license to use some of our intellectual property, so our articles and our videos. I told him absolutely, and I said, you don't have to pay me. Let's just get the word out there. This book has now been published. It's got quite a bit of content from Survival Dispatch. I'll put a link to it in the live chat in a minute if y'all are interested in it. But kind of cool thing. Oh, and I think I just heard, yep, Mike's got his camera backwards. Wait till he gets upright, and then I'll bring him on stage here. So we'll do the conflicted question next. Mr. Glover, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Living the dream. We're just getting into the conflicted question here. So the conflicted question of the night is, after the collapse of society, the federal government started a relocation program. They said they would coordinate people's skills and abilities and ship them to different parts of the country according to what they could do for their country. If your government were to try and relocate you and your neighbors, would you embrace this idea, or would you go against the government's orders and stay where you are? Why? Interesting question.
Randy, just remember the Native Indians, folks. Just remember the Native Indians.
Right. Touche. So Jeff and Randy have to leave at the top of the hour. So Mike and I will answer this question at the end of the broadcast. So I know all y'all have been following what's been going on in Minneapolis today. So we'll do a quick situation report on that. I think I've got maybe half a dozen videos to share on it. We'll get your input first, Mike, since you just joined us. So watch his newly released video shows the moment surrounding an ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Department of Homeland Security says the woman was shot after attempting to run over officers during an operation. 39 seconds.
Get the fuck out of our neighborhood.
By the way, the peaceful protesters in this area, a lot of profanity. So probably every video in the sit rep is going to have some element of profanity. Protect your youngins' ears if they're close by. So that's the cop right there that she was trying to run over. And of course, she's dead. So she runs into another vehicle here.
What the fuck? Dude, what the fuck?
So I don't need to play out the rest of that. But Mike, I got to get your take on this. I mean, we've all been predicting this sort of stuff was going to happen. Where do things go from here, Mike?
Well, it's ugly. I mean, I've looked at the commentary on both sides. And of course, like you would predict or expect, everybody on the left, the radical left, some sensibility still there. Everybody on the radical left is saying that it was murder, and obviously don't understand law, self-defense, as it relates to both law enforcement and civilians, and they don't understand how it works. On the other side of the coin, there's obviously, if you're a conservative, if you believe in law and order, and you carry a gun likely because you're willing to defend your life or protect your life, exercising your constitutional rights, then you saw what I saw, which is a justified self-defense act. So the problem with that is the rhetoric politicians are spewing is emboldening incompetent and low IQ people to do things like try to run over a police officer or pull their cars in front of convoys, stopping their business, their mission, objective, whatever it may be, and endangering their lives. So I think what we're going to see is continued rhetoric, as you just saw from the mayor of Minneapolis, who said, "Get the F out," from Governor Walz, because it's classic Minnesota that's been really the focal point of a lot of this drama, with a Somali vote block of 108,000 people. You're going to get these politicians saying and doing anything to get the vote, spewing propaganda to get more dumb people to do dumb things. And now this is just going to entice them to justify their end state. And it could be their literal end state, because it could be the end of their lives if they continue to F around and find out.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with you. Jeff, I'll come to you next on this. One, general thoughts, but a question for you as well. What do you make of the mayor, Jacob Frey, saying that they're going to kick ICE out? They're going to get the courts to throw ICE out of the city.
Yeah, that has about as much power as me kicking ICE out. He can't. They don't have any authority whatsoever over federal law enforcement. They can stay there as long as they need to stay there. He's just doing that for his voter base, and probably to signal to his Somali contributors that I got your back. He's him and Waltz both. Now Waltz is talking about using the National Guard to stop ICE. Well, that is sedition, and Trump will just step in and federalize him and take his authority away from him, which he should. Waltz should be in jail because he's just a crook. But both of these guys are just pandering to the left media. They've been wanting something like this to happen for the longest time, and now that it finally has, I really think they're just, oh goody, we have more talking points now.
Yeah, it's sick. It's absolutely sick. But Randy, your thoughts on this debacle?
Well, my thoughts are, well, this is what happens when accountability leaves, right? And the rule of law. I'm like, first of all, it's the media and the left politicians, who constantly we watched them during the Charlie Kirk assassination, then to say, oh, it's on both sides. But everybody knows, including the people that still support them that are regular people, that all the violent rhetoric is constantly coming from the left. And it's been doing so for at least 15 years. And this is the kind of thing they're calling for. And when they then pass on the message, as Mike described, and I think Jeff touched on too, when you start spreading the message that it's okay to go do whatever you want, we need to go interfere with ICE. We need to go interfere with the job that they're doing. Let's go get in the middle of it. Let's hinder it. Let's do whatever we can to subvert it and to just get in the way, basically, like that's legal. Hey, if you feel so inclined that you're going to go get in the way of federal officers and doing their job and their duties, certainly when they're out arresting criminals, and I don't care what you people want to say that are on the left, if the people here illegal, they're a criminal, whether they committed a crime or not, because they committed one by coming in illegally. And of course, I saw the video today from one of the Somalians, right, that was threatening Minneapolis. Now, if they don't if they don't keep up their end of the bargain and stop, calling out all this fraud, that they're going to start voting for somebody else but the Democrats. Well, there you have it. The Democrats have cooked this up. They brought this nation to a fever pitch over violent rhetoric. And now one of theirs gets killed, and they think they're going to use that as some sort of talking point, when the reality is they got that woman killed. Now, she did too. She drove. She's not from there. She went up there. She got in the way, and she gunned it when there was still an officer in the way. And by the way, a vehicle is considered a deadly weapon. So when you put the gas on the floor and you rush towards one, just like anybody else that has a gun, that's probably going to happen 100% of the time. So
safe assumption. So Mike, coming back to you, 20-second video of this slowed down here. If you don't mind, walk us through this. So just as soon as you just say stop, I'll pause. If you want to pause somewhere during the video,
you can stop it right there. Okay, so what you have is you have a law enforcement officer who's standing in front of the vehicle, and you have one on the side. And what they are taught, and this is coming from a certified federal law enforcement training instructor. I was certified by the CIA. Jeff is very familiar with this. I was certified at the farm by the Office of Security, the OS, and went through a course called the Firearms Development Instructor course, which made me FLETC certified mainly to train and qualify CIA personnel. But I can go to FLETC. I could train in any federal law enforcement capacity. That's CQB, that's basic quals, that's all the things. When we go through that training, we have to do every federal law enforcement qual. All these guys are taught the same basic tactics, and at the firearms law enforcement training center, and that includes containment. What they're setting is basic containment, an L-shaped containment surrounding the target, obviously not doing it on either side to avoid crossfire. So one person is in front of the vehicle. I believe this officer is holding a cell phone in one hand. It's government issued likely. And he's not even thinking about pulling his gun yet because there's not a threat. The person's stationary. And then one officer is telling the person to stop trying to open their door after they've announced. Obviously, everybody knows who they are in the neighborhood because they have vehicles that say who they are on the vehicle. So if you show the video, he attempts to go open the door while this law enforcement officer is standing in front of the vehicle. What I've heard, you can see where the wheels are turning right there. The wheels are turning to the left, to the driver's side, and rolling back. I've heard people say in the comments that the person's wheels were turned in the other direction, trying to drive away. The officer who's addressing this person, telling them to stop, who's about to draw his pistol because he sees them backing up and they're stopping, and he sees them being non-compliant, as in they're not stopping the vehicle, is likely going to become what's called an imminent threat. Imminent meaning they're not immediate, but they're imminent, likely to become immediate. An officer is trained to stop an imminent threat. And in self-defense constitutional law, it's imminent or immediate threat, not just immediate threat. Meaning if you're pulling your gun and I shoot you in self-defense, that's still self-defense. You don't have to have a gun pointed at my head, okay? So if you continue to roll it.
That's the draw right there.
Yeah, stop it right there. So I'm going to read you from the statute, the near vehicular assault self-defense protocol from the DOJ. It says, 1, the vehicle was under the civilian's direct control. We checked that block. The agent was within the vehicle's path of travel or unable to safely disengage. We checked that block. 3, the vehicle was accelerating or maneuvering. It doesn't have to be both, and it could be or, but in this case, it's both. Maneuvering in a manner consistent with an attempt to strike or overrun the agent. And finally, the threat was immediate and ongoing as it developed, not speculative or retrospective. So any court, any legal system in the process with DOJ, the AG's office, in their institution would see this as a defense of or a self-defense act under Graham versus Connor, which is the use of force is elevated from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene without the benefit of hindsight. applying those factors, which include severity of threat, immediacy of danger, which a car coming at you is immediacy, active resistance or assault, the civilian's actions constitute active resistance, and available of alternatives. Now, some would argue that in this case, we can continue to roll it because you're going to see her turn from driver. It's already straight. She's going to go passenger. And go ahead, as it's turning, stop right there. So the officer is standing in front of the vehicle. He cannot see the orientation of the wheel. He cannot see what direction that wheel is going. And because he's standing in front of it holding containment, it is her responsibility to stop after she was giving a lawful order, right? They didn't say, hey, here's a gun in your face, we're bad guys. They said, we're law enforcement, we need you to stop. She disobeyed all lawful orders, and she didn't try to flee the scene. She tried to run over the officer. So he draws his pistol and he shoots 3 rounds total. You could roll it, and let's try to stop it at the after the first shot when he sidesteps.
That looks like the first shot right there in the last.
The first shot goes through, because I saw the picture, it goes to the lower left windshield, which would, if at his angle, would have deviated down. That is likely not the fatal round, right? That bullet would have at least deviated its trajectory. It would have likely turned sideways, potentially. It would have yawed or pitched. And then it might have even hit the dashboard because it did look like it was low on the windshield. And then if you continue to roll it, you can see his left foot's almost struck. Now she's turned right there all the way to the right. He sidesteps. He's in the middle of an engagement, and he shoots 2 more rounds. The second and third round, likely the fatal rounds that struck her.
Number 2.
The availability of alternatives says safe retreat or disengagement was not reasonably available under the circumstances. Now, that could be argued, but based on the video that I saw, it's likely that the agent was required to make a split-second decision to preserve life, which is directly from the statute, which would justify use of force and deadly force in this case.
Man, that's awesome information, Mike. Jeff, I want to get your input on it. I don't expect you to disagree with anything Mike said at all.
No.
Just give me your breakdown.
Yeah, a vehicle is a deadly weapon. If someone aims a vehicle at you and you have the right, it's just like if they point a gun at you, to defend yourself. And this woman was obviously disregarding lawful orders, so it meant she either freaked out or she had an agenda. And so there's nothing in her actions that would let him to reasonably assume or determine that she was like, okay, I'm going to stop now. No, she came at him. And, you know, she had her wheels cocked to the left. She went and cocked her wheels to the right where he was standing. You know, the only reason he didn't get hit and knocked to the ground is because he was able to, you know, just basically play Matador with the car and just slip past barely. But I still think he was, I've seen other videos where it showed him, he was contacted by the vehicle. And at that point, all bets are off.
Yeah, I agree. Randy, speculative question. Do you think that either the city or the state is going to try and charge this cop?
Well, I guarantee you they will. I have zero doubt that they will. Certainly with what the mayor already came out and said, you know, and until somebody, I don't know, you know, really, and them even threatened to pull the National Guard. Even if they did though, and before, which obviously the Trump administration would federalize them, but wouldn't that be an insurrection?
I agree. But well, yeah, let's get everybody else's opinion, Jeff. Mike?
If you're nationalizing the National Guard to go against the federal government, or not nationalizing, if you're activating, if a governor is activating the National Guard to go against the federal government, yes, that is insurrection. George Wallace didn't even do that in Alabama in the 50s when they were integrating the schools, because Eisenhower, I think it was, I don't know if it was the Army or the Marine Corps, but he sent troops in. And for them, they would have had to have basically, you know, drawn on active U.S. military. And even Wallace was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. because he knew it would be all over the crime.
Yeah. Mike, thoughts on them trying to charge this cop?
I think it will happen. I also think they'll continue to feed into the rhetoric. Most of the country will be against them, but they'll cause more law enforcement officers to be threatened, potentially injured, and potentially killed because of their rhetoric. It's my opinion. There's likely legal precedent to be able to charge these politicians with inciting violence. I mean, if you tweeted and incited violence, you could be criminally charged. If a politician does it, which is fascinating, on the biggest stage politically, nothing's said at all. That should change.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike, just because we had this situation go down in Venezuela. Do you think that law enforcement that's on side with Waltz and Frey would set up an operation to go and try and capture this guy and put him in detention?
I just saw the chief of police of Minneapolis talk on a press conference, and it looked like to me he's already been bought.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like he's on the wrong side of history.
Do you think he'll go after this cop, though? Do you think they would put together like a mission, basically like a Maduro mission, to grab him and detain him?
I wouldn't put it past him based on the rhetoric and the propaganda he was spewing at that press conference. He should know better. It's embarrassing. I'll react to it tomorrow on my YouTube Reacts, and I'll be hammering his ass.
Right on, right on. All right, next video is the crowd in the surrounding area. It's 1 minute and 49 seconds. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Again, there's more cussing from the crowd in here, but this is the reaction immediately after the incident.
You are all terrible individuals.
Let me stop there. All three of you, I'll go to Mike, I'll go to you first. There are way more spectators there than there are cops there. How quickly can this go from a shouting match to a kinetic conflict?
They better get their drones up, because the first thing that's likely to happen is some hero, I mean that facetiously, is potentially going to pop off shots and wants the conflict. They're rolling forward towards supreme anarchy, and the antagonists will surely come out to get a response. And I would be concerned. I would not be in the streets. If I was a supervisor on scene, I would not have my guys that are federal agents on the street arguing or standing in front of civilians that are shouting at them after an event like this. And I would request, if Minneapolis wants to handle it, they better bring themselves out. And if they don't, I would request the President of the United States to activate the National Guard to lock down and create corridors everywhere my agents go, or we wouldn't be out on the streets.
That makes perfect sense. Jeff, I want to get your thoughts on the same question, but also from a legal perspective. If this did turn into, a kinetic conflict between the two, what are the chances that the agitators are not charged by the local authorities, because the local authorities are promoting this shit?
Well, yeah, there's a very good chance that they won't get charged. If it gets kinetic, it's going to have to be because one of the agitators initiated. These ICE people are very professional. They are only going to react to a threat. They are not going to initiate it. And you're going to get, like Mike said, you're going to get some idiot who, has a gun and he's going to take a shot. And once that happens, they're going to return fire. And they'll probably get the guy shooting at him, but who knows what happens to the people around him. Once a bullet leaves the barrel, it has no friends. But the really disgusting thing about this is the local officials are doing nothing to calm things down. In fact, they are trying to rev things up, but purely for political purposes. Think about it. They are at ground zero of this multi-billion-dollar Somali fraud investigation. And anything that will deflect attention away from their wrongdoing, their stupidity, their incompetence, they will jump at. It's just like when Waltz announced, yeah, I'm not going to run again. And it was all January 6th. You know, what does that have to do with anything? You know, what? Yeah, the January 6th guys made you set up phony daycare centers. Yeah, of course they did. But they're looking for any excuse to deflect attention away from their own troubles. This is a local version of a wag the dog scenario.
Yeah, no kidding. Mike or Jeff or Randy, what's this guy's name again? The guy who
Bovino?
Is that it? The guy in the center there? Like he's
I think it's Bovino.
He's pretty high up, right? What would his title be again? I'm just having one of those moments.
I don't know. He may be a deputy director or something.
He's somewhere fairly high, but involved in the tactical end of things. I was kind of surprised to see him there. But Randy, I want to get your take on the chances of something like this going kinetic in both directions, and then what happens.
Well, I think both of them already answered that pretty well, right? I mean, if you know, sooner or later, it's just a question of when, right? Nobody thinks it's not going to happen, because sooner or later, you know, as I was watching that video, I was thinking to myself, boy, that $50,000 bonus probably wasn't worth all that, was it? But then I thought back to my own service and uniform, and I guess I can't really say that because we definitely put up with stuff like that. But the reality is, you know, with tempers flaring like that, sooner or later, sooner or later, that match is going to be struck. And, you know, it's like any other thing. Once you open that can, you know, you can't put the lid back on. So,
yeah, no kidding. Once the genie's out, Mike, I don't know if you've seen this video, coming back to you here, and I'll just step through it. But on the right-hand side, you can, right there, that cop pushes that guy who's an agitator, and right here at point blank range, I know what it is, but what exactly is it? Like, describe that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, he hit him with tear gas, and I'm surprised it didn't have a projectile. And it looked like just the tear gas came out of it, so it might be a close proximity tear gas system.
Okay.
Versus, you know, they know they're in conflict. These dudes aren't going to have 40 Mike tear gas canisters in their weapon systems going face to face. So it just blasts them with, you could just see it. There's not even a projectile that hits
right.
And breaks apart. What it is just straight tear gas coming from the front end of that. Yeah. But I have a problem with all of that. I mean, one, if you want your officers' lives to be risked, do that. If they're in direct contact or within reach of these radical lunatics, I mean, one, every single person that doesn't disperse should be charged with a federal crime. Okay, if we're talking about where January 6th, we're basically, if you were escorted in by a law enforcement officer with 200 present FBI agents, you were charged with a federal crime under the Biden administration and put in prison for years, sometimes decades. And these people are doing it because they're getting away with it again and again and again. I would have buses transporting people to go to federal prison nonstop, and I would make and demonstrate that we are not taking the risk, because all it takes is one, and we just saw what happened today. The agitation is going to motivate these people to get even more radical because they think they can get away with it. And again, they're motivated because they think they're on the right side of history. I couldn't even believe the comments. I think it was ABC, which is left for sure, but right on the left spectrum. And all the comments from the people that are watching were like, these cops are murderers. Give me his name. And people were requesting his name. Do we know his name yet? You know why they want his name? Because they want to go to his house and kill him. That's why. And that's the danger that these officers face every time they're toe-to-toe with, by the way, enforcing law. They're not terrorizing neighborhoods. They're not terrorizing people. They're cleaning up the mess the Biden administration let on this country.
Yeah, 100%. Jeff, pick that up and run with it. I want to hear your thoughts on the use of tear gas here. and the rest of the stuff Mike commented on. And you're on mute.
Tear gas should, in my opinion, tear gas should only be used if the crowd is threatening. Someone yelling at you doesn't justify tear gas. I mean, you're paid to take it. You know, it's part of the job. Now, if they're getting close, they're pushing, they're starting to get physical. Yeah, and you need to, to develop a barrier there, a zone a protective zone. Yeah, that'll keep people away.
Quickly, this is happening at the same time that her vehicle crashed into the other one. So this is immediately after.
So and on both sides, tensions are going to be very high on the police side and on the crowds. But you want to de-escalate, not escalate. Now, sometimes they won't let you. If that happens, it happens. But spraying someone in the face with tear gas should not be your first go-to.
Fair enough. Randy, your thoughts on this part of the episode with the tear gas?
Well, I thought I saw if you could back it up a little bit, and I think a couple people mentioned it on there. It looked like that guy touched his gun, that officer's weapon at some point. Right there.
Yeah, right there.
And when that happens,
you're gonna
all the gloves are off. All the gloves are off.
At that point, you're done.
Yep, you're absolutely right. There you go. Good catch.
He's like he didn't get shot.
Mike, what do you think justification wise? Like, he grabbed the gun, it's kid gloves are off because of that. I'm not saying it's not.
I've killed men for touching my gun in combat. I've done it several times in close proximity, and our rules of engagement were different, but it is definitely a risk, an imminent threat to those law enforcement officers when you grab their gun. And how do you recognize, bumping a gun versus grabbing the gun to acquire it to use against you? I mean, that guy doesn't know that 40 Mike is a tear gas canister. He might think that's the real gun, and he might be trying to pull it off of him.
Well, he's got a hold of the sling right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets what he deserves at that point.
Yeah, because it looked like for a second he tried to pull it away.
Sure did. Right when he grabbed the sling right there.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. This kind of proximity is utilized for riot police or law enforcement officers in riot gear, and there's a reason they use shields, not only to stop them from getting pummeled with bricks and bottles, but also to create distance so they're not grabbing at the officers' guns or compromising their space and potentially their life or bodily injury. And so this whole thing's a mess, and it's in my opinion, it's just a failure of leadership on many levels. Like, these officers shouldn't be getting even out of their vehicles, and if they're doing an operation, they should have local containment, but they're obviously not going to get that support. So there is justification to bring in. There's a reason Rangers provide containment for Delta when they hit the target. They're keeping bad guys in and anybody else from bugging out. And in this kind of situation, containment is meant to protect the force so they can do their job. It's obvious they're not doing that.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to go to this one and come to you first, Brandy. I'll go the opposite way this time. The St. Paul mayor's obstruction of ICE operations isn't leadership, it's sabotage. Federal agents are executing lawful warrants against criminal violators, including those with prior deportations and violent records. When local officials block enforcement, they enable cartel exploitation, human trafficking, and wage suppression that hurts legal workers. The National Guard deployment under Title 10 authority, exists precisely because sanctuary cities refuse to cooperate, forcing federal intervention to restore order. Minneapolis's 2025 Metro Surge operations proved targeted enforcement removes threats, like the Somali national with multiple felonies arrested at Brooklyn Park's Crumbs and Coffee. Mayors prioritizing performative politics over public safety will answer to voters when their cities face the consequences of unchecked lawlessness. Man, pick that ball up and run with that one.
Well, it's what we've already been talking about, really. Here's the problem: if those governors and those states and those mayors of those cities, if they're complicit with the bad guys and they are trying to mitigate federal law, removing criminals, well, that makes you a criminal. And what I don't get is how come we're not arresting more of these folks? Because that is breaking the law. And last, we always heard of the left always constantly saying, right, no one's above the law. Well, show us, because these people need to be arrested. At the very least, they need to be removed from office. And we need to let law enforcement do its job. And local law enforcement should be helping federal law enforcement in this particular case for sure, without a doubt.
Very well said, Randy. So let me pull the next one up here. Come to you first, Jeff, and I'll go through it slow. But check this out. This is, after the shooting, after news had spread of the shooting, and these peaceful protesters came out of nowhere. Like that already at that particular point right there is about double the size of the crowd. And of course, as you go later and later, it ended up many, many times the original size. Like they all flocked to it like flies on shit, I guess. But you can see how the concentration was building up there.
Because no one's doing anything about them either, Chris. We've watched it for 4 years now.
Well, that's my question for you, Jeff. At what point do you roll with Mike's SOP and you get your officers out of harm's way? I mean, they're standing in a straight line, as you can see, pretty much in the middle of the screen. I mean, I'm not saying anybody on the panel here disagrees with Mike. I'm just wondering, like, at what point do you pull the pin and say, we're getting the F out of here?
Yeah, I mean, you go to the city and say, look, we got a situation here. You need to get your people into here to contain and disperse this crowd. And if you don't do it, we're just going to leave, and you're going to have a dead woman in a car on the street. Your choice. Because we're not going to put our people at risk. And if people try to stop them from leaving, you'll have more casualties because we're not going to stand there and be beat to death.
Yeah. So, Mike, I want to get your thoughts on, whether they exfil or they stay. What about, do the ICE guys have anything like armored vehicles? Are they MRAPs that they would have potentially, or no?
Yeah, they have a wide variation depending on where they originated at. They have a array of vehicles at their disposal, and they're buying them in troves, by the way. And so they have that ability. I think Jeff's recommendation would set a precedent. I think that's actually a good idea. Look, it becomes basically a crime scene. At what point does that crime scene, one, become compromised? Because it's not the crime of the officer, it's the crime of the suspect who tried to run over a police officer. Two, when you can't fulfill your duties and safety is an issue and you exfil, then let them clean up the mess. And then again, it sets a precedent that, look, DOJ up the chain of command, this is not working. We will continue mission. We need to find a solution. Even if it's Department of War and getting active duty members of special operations to go out there and set containment or to support them in some way for them to be able to do their job. I don't care if it's Rangers and Panders and Strikers and up-armored vehicles. I want to see them roll in and get these Tren de Aragua guys, these cartel guys off the streets. I don't care where they are. I don't care if they're in a market, a grocery store, a mom and pop shop. I want that to happen, especially in Minnesota where we see vile corruption. And so I think the answer is now. There's no way in hell I would risk my guys' lives after an engagement like that, where one of my guys was almost killed by being run over. I would shut everything down, load them up, and exfil and tell my chain of command, you need to sort it out politically to figure out how to navigate this, because I'm not risking the life of my guys over a bunch of civilians who potentially might have guns or use cars to run over my guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So we've got a few more things in the sit rep before we go into the main topics. We'll change gears a little bit here. And Randy, I'll come to you first on this, but Eric Doherty says terrifying. The Muslims in Ohio outright admitted their plans. Islam is coming to America one day. America will be an Islamic state. It can't ever be allowed to happen. Repel Islam. 39 seconds.
It's coming to America.
Islam's coming to America?
Yes, it's coming.
Wait, is it going to be
One day, America will become a Muslim state, a Muslim country.
Really?
Tell Trump.
That's never going to happen.
Yes, it will
That is
happen.
never going to happen.
God is powerful.
It's never going to happen.
God is powerful.
Is that what everybody here wants? You want to see a
That's
Muslim
what
country?
we are. Our goal is to make America Islam.
Really?
Islamic state.
Never gonna happen.
Yes. God is powerful.
It's never going to happen.
You control the heart of Americans. God guides whom He wills.
Over my dead body will this become an Islamic
يريدون ليطفئوا نور الله بأفواههم
like this.
والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون.
Whew. All right, Randy. How's your blood
Yeah.
pressure?
Well, I mean, that guy, he can say whatever he wants. I just want to address one question over here before we moved on. Justin Clacker just compared the Ashley Babbitt situation with what happened earlier today. Look, dude, that's pathetic. You must be in the wrong room because they're completely two different situations. So now back to this Muslim guy. Well, here's reality. They are coming. And if we're not going to be willing to step up and stop them at some point, there's not going to be any stopping them. He's telling us exactly what they're going to do. I don't know, throughout the day, I saw a couple of different posts today where they were bragging about, one of them was here in Texas, and I don't remember where the other one was, where they have bought churches, right, that were churches, and they bought them just now, and now they're going to turn it into a mosque. And they're bragging about it because in the Muslim world, defeating another religion, that's what this is. So, of course, them going around buying up churches and turning it into mosques, one, it's not a good thing for us. Two, that is them, certainly when they want to post about it and brag like it's some kind of defeat. They're telling us exactly what they're going to do. They're telling us exactly what their plans are. We should listen.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jeff, two things for you. Number one, I'm sure you want to address that moronic comment regarding Ashley Babbitt, but the follow-up after that question is, what has happened in recent times to embolden these jihadis to be very public and vocal with their intentions, whereas in the past they tried to maintain a low visibility, but they think that they've I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but they've crossed some sort of threshold as far as their behavior is concerned.
Well, you've got one of the major political parties that let them get away with everything. The Democrats don't call them on any of that stuff. And the Republicans don't as much as they need to. Everybody needs to and say, look, this is not a Muslim country. This is a multicultural, multi-religious country. No one is going to buy into your crap. And if you try to do it, we'll kick your ass out. We need to kick them out anyway. Most of them just need to be bounced and just say what you are preaching is antithetical to American culture and go back home.
Do you want to chime in on Ashley Babbitt or take a pass?
Yeah, that's just someone trying to stir the pot. And not the same situation at all, but they're just trying to get a rise out of people. Just a troll.
Yeah, not the same situation because she was unarmed and she didn't try to kill somebody.
Nope.
Like this lady.
Well, and he's trying to say now that she breached the White House. It didn't happen either. And even at the it's already proven she didn't break into the Capitol building either. So just stop.
Well, let's just throw a little bit more fuel on the fire here. All three of you can answer this. What kind of chicken shit man does it take to shoot an unarmed woman versus the big guys that she was surrounded by? If it truly was going to turn violent, why would you shoot the woman first? Anybody want to field that?
I personally, I wouldn't. That's something I just wouldn't do.
It just strikes me as crazy. But Mike, this one, I'm coming straight to you on this one. Somali immigrant's son, Liban Mohammed, just announced he's running for Congress in Utah's brand new first district. No way this happens. America's for Americans, not turning our seats into extensions of third world countries. 1 minute, 16 seconds.
Utah leads the nation in charitable giving. Yet our leaders take us for granted. For far too many Utahns, the American dream is slipping away. Corporations are pricing us out of our own homes. Raising a family is more expensive than ever. And even though we spend more money on healthcare than any nation on earth, nearly 300,000 Utahns are left without health coverage. But together, we can change this.
Where are you living? Come help me.
And that's why I'm running for Congress. We will fight for universal childcare, so no parent has to choose between their child and their career. We will build housing that's actually affordable and restrict corporations from taking over our neighborhoods. We will treat healthcare as a human right that it is. Full coverage for every American at a lower cost for our families. Politicians love to say we can't afford any of this, all the while they're funding genocide and giving billionaires tax breaks. We already showed the world what service and care looks like. It's time we get a government that does the same. My name is Liban Mohammed, and I'm running for Congress.
All right. So, Mike, for starters, how close is this guy to where you're at?
It's right down the road in the valley. I mean, and he'll likely win because there's a disaffected population from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, mainly in the Salt Lake City area, that would be happy to put a Muhammad in charge because they're disaffected from the church. It's one of the reasons why I'm getting my ass out of Utah. And it reminds me of what I would define as radical fundamentalist. Like the term radical fundamentalist is an individual group that rigidly adheres to a literalist belief system and seeks to impose that belief system on others. I mean, everything he's spewing in the extreme is called socialism or communism. And he wants that microcosm because he thinks from wherever he came from, it looks like Somalia. He looks like he has hereditary genes from some Somali hereditary genes. That's the American dream because the American taxpayer will pay for all your welfare. 84% of Somalians in Minnesota are on some form of welfare.
Wow.
So all they want to do is come over here and radically apply their fundamentals from where they come from. And that radical jihadist, likely, who is spewing all his garbage about turning basically America into a caliphate, that's exactly what they want to do. And guess what? Because, as Jeff described, because nearly half the nation agrees politically with one side, and that's what they're supporting, you're likely to see it, which is this socialist democratic movement across the nation. And guys like this who are being funded by the Mamdanis and the guys who funded him are likely going to take over in many ways in pockets across conservative states like Utah, which is losing itself every single day, and will eventually become California, where you have no chance of recovery and you'll just burn down like the Palisades.
Yeah, crazy stuff. So, Jeff, I'll just go up the list now. These guys are spreading out, man. I mean, It's like an infestation.
And this is that red-green alliance that Khalid had talked about, the Muslims and the socialists. Because you listen to everything he said is socialist.
Yes.
Every single thing he said sounds just like Mamdani in New York or Bernie Sanders. Oh, Medicare for all or Medicaid, whatever, Medicaid for all or Medicare for all. And yeah, we're going to make things affordable by, not letting corporations do things. And we're going to have free healthcare and free daycare and free. That's just the typical, it's just socialism. But the thing is, if the Green-Red Alliance ends up winning, it'll become the Green Alliance, because the first thing the Greens will do is kill off the Reds.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Randy, I mean, we're knee deep in the shit in Texas, but now it's heading even further west. Disconcerting.
Well, look, and they go on this, healthcare insurance thing, right? And that everybody should have it. It should be a right. It's never been a right in this country or any other country in the world, period. And in fact, insurance is somewhat of a financial scheme. It is. Let's just call it for what it is. They charge people a lot of money, and back before Obama took office, right, and brought in the Obamacare. Of course, they wanted to name it something else right after that. It changed insurance forever. Previous to that, insurances were pretty good. You know what I mean? They had good insurance, and so now we allow the government to get into it. But here's reality, though. Even for your insurance companies, and for those that don't know, insurance companies are just like banks. They're financial institutions. They have to go by the same rules and all that kind of stuff. But what that really means is they get money cheaper than we do by far. And they make more money off your money than they'll ever allow us to make. And furthermore, insurance companies are able to rake in billions every year, but still declare a loss every single year. There's no other field of work that can do that. And, so why, of course, Obama and people like him would want to get in the get the government in the insurance business. Why? So they could make money off of it. I heard back a few years ago when Magic Johnson retired completely from everything. It was like, well, what's it? And he's like a billionaire now. Everybody, well, somebody asked him how he did it. And he said, well, I bought an insurance company. So what does that tell you? So now Doge supposedly uncovered that ever since they approved that, Obama's getting paid every year for bringing that to the system. And I don't know, it was, since he's been out of office, it was the tune of $10 or $20 million at this point. I don't know if any of that's true, but that's what came out with Doge. And that's why he wanted it in. But let's just take Medicare, for example, which I have, which now sucks. It is like terrible insurance. But, I've also watched my girlfriend, who's went through a lot of medical care the last 2.5 years, that has a private insurance plan. But it is amazing how terrible it is. And all the co-pays that you now have to pay and everything else, not to mention they're constantly denying stuff. And she has Cigna. So, all I can look at was just like everybody else that got mad when the guy from Humana was killed, right? Because he deserved it because they're declining people. Well, the people, y'all know, he was the lowest paid one in the market. He only got $10 million a year. So let's just look at Cigna, the one my girlfriend has that now the insurance sucks. That dude or woman, I don't know who the CEO is, but they're cashing $2 million checks per month, $24 million a year, and they're declining people on claims. They're charging all these deductibles and everything else that go up every single year. And yet, again, they all break in billions every year, but declare a loss. It is a scheme. So this guy talking about getting all this health care for everybody else, realize, people, all you're doing is ruining all insurance. Because let's ask all the people at the bottom of that ACA, what does that insurance get them and what are they paying for it? And what kind of benefits is it? It all sucks.
Yeah, it does. Just a quick anecdote here. So our primary is not only a personal friend of ours, but she was also one of my clients. She was the very first DPC doctor in Florida, so direct primary care. So no insurance. You pay a flat rate each month, like a gym membership, and you use it as much as you want or not, like a gym membership. So number one, she sets aside 1 hour for every patient, whether she needs it or not the 7 minutes if you're on insurance, right? She went to all kinds of local imaging companies and stuff years ago and negotiated rates. So I had to get an MRI a couple years ago. She says, okay, we'll go to Twin Lakes, and the cash price is $225. And I said, okay. So I go to Twin Lakes, and I said, here's the $225. And they're like, well, our records show that you have insurance and your copay on your insurance is $750. And I was like, I don't have insurance, which I did, but I don't have insurance. Here's my $225. Turned into a big fight. The manager had to come out and everything. I said, I don't have it. I don't have insurance. Your records are wrong. Take my $225. Just crooked as all get out. Anyway, with that being said, quick thank you here to Mike. Thank you. You know what? Mike Glover is kind of close to this Nick Sorter thing. Before we go to the next one, and we might have to let Randy and Jeff go before then, you answer this one, Mike. Why the hell did it take 23-year-old to expose what we pay all of these assholes to do every day.
It's because the media, the corporate media is bought. There are no corporate entities that are doing journalism at all. Again, like journalism used to be investigations into things that were wrong, uncovering the truth. That used to be what journalism was. Now, investigative journalism is some form of corruption exposure that has to do with the state highway patrol arresting sober people. It's an investigative report special that lasts 5 minutes on local news. Now it's just corporate heads talking via a script that's produced and disseminated across the entire network. And so it does take independent journalists like Nick Shirley to communicate the truth and do actual investigations, because he's not bought by anybody. He's doing advertisements for Shopify, and he's getting, if he's lucky, he's getting some revenue from YouTube. So he's a conservative, happens to be, but he's just reporting objective truth, lives in Utah, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take independent reporters, and thank God for them, because they're exposing and then through that killing the corporate media, which are again are all propagandists working for whoever their master is.
Yeah, good answer. So Jeff and Randy, I'll end on this one. I usually don't do this, but this guy deserves this. We have hundreds of thousands of people over the years who signed up for the Survival Dispatch Insider newsletter, which we no longer do because I retooled all of that stuff when I took control of the company. So this particular guy is one of those people who signed up for the newsletter, the Survival Dispatch Insider newsletter. And he writes, fuck you, hail Satan, get out of my fucking inbox. And the reason I brought it up is because I just saw somebody in the side say something about Satan. If this isn't an example of mental illness, I don't know what is. I don't know if anybody wants to weigh in on it or not, but I want to, I told this guy, thank you for responding. I'll make sure that we get you some exposure. So Justin Hartzell from him, Jeff, you look like you got something on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, these are people who are trying to be outrageous, just to get a rise out of people. And, I doubt this guy's a Satanist, but he knows that, we're Christians or Judeo-Christians or whatever you want to call us. And so he's going to say something that he thinks is going to get us all freaked out. No, we're not. I've seen, you see idiots like this every day. This is a crowd that walks around with 20 piercings through their face and then complaining that they can't get a job. It's just like, yeah, you're right. You can't get a job because you're a freaking loser. And this guy is just a freaking loser.
Yeah, keyboard commando, right? So we're basically at the top of the hour. So Jeff and Randy, appreciate y'all's time tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All righty. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, guys. And Mike, I got to get you up on the other stage here. So we're going to go directly into
again.
Oh, no kidding.
Out and then I'm back.
Okay. So while Mike's bouncing out and in, for some reason, every time we change the stage on StreamYard, or at least the first time, he loses his audio. So it's tripping something on his phone. With that being said, before we go into this next chapter and while we're waiting on Mike coming back, those of you who've been patiently waiting for our next comms series of videos and articles, we are this close. Dr. Mike and I have spent tens of thousands of dollars out of our own pockets, and I was just going to show you something really quick. So let me get Mike back on stage here. Hey, Mike. So while you were gone, I was just letting our audience know that we're like this close to our next comms video, which will be like the mother of all videos for comms. And yes, we have a bunch of radios and a bunch of antennas to cover, but Chameleon Antenna, these guys are like mad scientists. These are the guys who make antennas for you guys, Mike, for your echoes in your teams and stuff like that. And So they not only make antennas, they make stuff to fix other people's antennas or enhance their antennas. So this cluster of stuff is from a super antenna MP1 DXG. There's many aspects to it that's really good, but this is some hokey shit right here. And you can replace this piece with another piece mounted on a tripod, but because it's offset, it falls over. If you look at the connectors for the radials, they're just a spade connector. So if somebody trips over one of the radials on the ground, invariably it ends up tearing the end off of the wire. So we got some stuff from Chameleon, and this is a full balun, but they make a thing that's called a blank. It's like a third of the size, but it's shaped exactly the same. I have it set up in the other room. I couldn't fit it in here. So we got rid of all this hokey crap on that MP1 and went with this with banana connectors for the radials. If somebody trips on them, it's kind of like a magnetic power supply on your MacBook Pro. Anyway, for the techies amongst us, this here with the radials all bunched up together, the SWR was 3.0. And when we replaced it with the blank and this hub and the banana connector, still with the radials all bunched up, it dropped it to 1.2. So we'll be bringing a lot of stuff to the table as far as the stuff that works, the stuff that doesn't work, and some of the stuff that doesn't work or works okay, how to make it even better. So, Mike, I've got to do the 911 2.0 spiel here. If you want to grab a coffee or anything, now's the time. It'll take me a few minutes to get through it. So this 144 episode series called the Long War series that Khalid and I wrote is all predicated on one thing. It's all post 911 2.0. Normally for creators, and Mike would know this, if you say, oh, this is a 5-part series, after the first video is published, the second through the fifth get very low views because anybody who missed the first one thinks I don't have context. So when we wrote this 144 episode series, we specifically made everything relate to post 911 2.0. So that begs the question, what's 911 2.0 based on the intelligence that's at our disposal? Number one, our intelligence is firsthand. So Khalid has 400 boots on the ground. His group has penetrated over 80 out of 120 known terrorist camps in Afghanistan. So when we bring you intelligence and we say, hey, this is from Khalid and Command 11, and Khalid will be back next week, by the way, it's from firsthand intel. It's not something that we got from open source intel. It's not something that we got from somebody else, second, third hand. So his intelligence essentially shows that 911 2.0 is a plot for the jihadis to attack 10 to 15 tier 2 American cities simultaneously. So tier 2 city being 100,000 to 500,000 people. However, there's hundreds of cities that fit that bill, but there's a much lower number of cities that are tier 2 cities who also have one level 1 trauma center. Those are the very, very specific targets. What does the attack look like? It looks like Mumbai in 2008, which was a complex coordinated terrorist attack on steroids. So why do I say that? Mumbai 2008, go watch Hotel Mumbai if you want to see a really good representation on the screen of what a CCTA looks like. So these guys, they landed on a Zodiac boat, came ashore. They split into 5 groups of 2 jihadis each. The first group goes into a train station, wipes out, kills 50 people inside the first 2 minutes. They hit a bunch of other soft targets. They converge on the Taj Hotel, which they seized. 911 2.0 is pretty similar. And I want to mention that between the time that they landed on the beach in Mumbai to the time that they got to the hotel, they were being given directions by 2 command and control operations, one in northeast Pakistan, the other one in Afghanistan. And what these guys were doing was watching live news feeds, social media feeds, and they were telling them, hey, don't go to that target, go to this other target, pivot here, pivot there, so that they could do the maximum amount of damage. And the goal was really to kill as many first responders as possible in the secondary and tertiary attacks. So 911 2.0 in America, what's it look like? In addition to 10 to 15 cities being attacked, each of those cities has 10 to 15 sleeper cells, and each of those sleeper cells has somewhere between 4 and 12 well-trained jihadis jacked up on drugs to minimize any pain that they may feel from getting hurt, to completely annihilate any sense of hunger, to shut down the part of the brain where morality exists, those sort of things. So it will take a very large command and control contingency overseas, probably a combination of Iran, and Afghanistan, giving these guys, directions, go here, go there. But they will also have body cams on, most likely. So they'll have another layer of reporting and intelligence as they're trying to tell these guys where to go. A great example would be they pull into a school, one of these sleeper cells. They go on the roof. They're dressed up as HVAC technicians. The van has an HVAC name on it. They put sarin nerve gas canisters in the HVAC ductwork. They come back down. It goes off. Everybody's dead within 3 minutes. I won't give the full spiel on sarin tonight because I want to get Mike back on stage fast as possible. But instead of leaving, they sit there and they wait for the first responders to show up. And then that van, it blows up. It's a ginormous VBIED, vehicle-borne IED, because they want to kill as many of them as they can. So if you are so unfortunate to be on the X or near the X when these attacks go down and it happens, the first wave, and you go, dodged a bullet, our advice to everybody, and if you retain nothing else but this, then we did our job, is to get as far away as fast as you possibly can. There have been a record number of law enforcement paramedic uniforms stolen over the past 18 months. Law enforcement vehicles, ambulances, National Guard uniforms, National Guard Humvees. There will be jihadis dressed up as first responders to lure people in, basically, before they kill them. So they will pivot from one soft target to another to create as much horror as possible to converge on the hospital. When they siege the hospital, they now have somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 hostages in each of those hospitals. And they will booby trap the hospital, and they will use the hospital as a base to blast out videos of them torturing, maiming, killing Americans. And it's not going to be very easy to unsiege these hospitals. Keep in mind, 10 to 15 hospitals and 2,000 to 3,000 highly trained jihadis, depending on how many are in each sleeper cell, so that when we do try to unsiege them, there will be things like more nerve gas or other chemical biological weapons let off. The jihadis will have suicide vests on with dead man switches, so if they get killed, they fall over, blows up, kills everybody in close proximity. And Mike has spoken to this before. We've got a handful of SWAT teams like LAPD SWAT team, which is, cream of the crop. You've got the FBI's HRT teams. There's 4 of them, 140 assets in total. But in reality, the group that is best trained and equipped for this is Delta Team, to basically go in and kill the bad guys and save as many of the hostages as possible. Long story short, it's not gonna, this unsieging of the hospitals is not going to happen in the blink of an eye. It's going to be a pretty horrific situation. And again, this is from the intel. There's also an airline piece to it. I'm going to skip it tonight in the interest of brevity. But if you want to look up Bojinka, Bojinka, it was a strategy that Osama bin Laden came up with in the mid-1990s that will be rolled into 9/11 2.0. All right, so tonight's episode I titled Parallel Law Enforcement and Sanctuaries. And it's just totally ironic that we had this incident in Minneapolis today, which is really pitting federal versus local law enforcement against each other. So essentially competing justice systems and local jurisdictions defying federal authority, enforcing their own rules and protections. So we have already entered a phase now where crisis response is no longer unified. When terror strikes scale, the question becomes, who's actually in charge? For conservatives who believe in order, or real Americans, TM Randy Nance, and family protection and moral clarity, parallel law enforcement, isn't compassion. It's chaos. It's downright dangerous. So the first segment I titled The Second Impact, Law Breaks First. So when these cities get hit in this coordinated terror wave, the first crack, metaphorically speaking, is not just the concrete and glass. It's a command and control, because agencies on the other side, by the way, not command and control for the jihadis, because agencies get overloaded, leaders start picking sides, instead of following one playbook. And that's where this parallel law enforcement is born. Local officials decide what gets enforced, what gets ignored, who gets protected. Then they wrap it in policy while the public's still in shock. Well, I don't think the public actually even has to be in shock because we're already seeing this happen. But once that switch flips, the terror threat multiplies because attackers and agitators, what we had today were agitators, they learn really fast where the seams are, and a divided system, creates these safe lanes for bad actors and dead ends for innocent civilians. So, Mike, I'm going to come to you. Oh, looks like we lost Mike. Oh, no, there he is. Sorry. Apologies. Let's get Mike up here on stage. There. Get me out of this. Hold on, Mike. There we go. Apologies. So, Mike, first question for you is, what's the first sign that a city is going down that slippery slope and sliding into parallel enforcement instead of unified?
But I think the first thing is chaos and the capabilities not being able to keep up with the capacity of conflict. If things are going south and you have focus directed in any one direction, you're dropping the ball somewhere else. And when that happens, I mean, that's seemingly an objective of anarchy, is outsource chaos to, allocate, fixing the chaos in one direction so you could basically spread the chaos throughout. And so I think what happens is when you see things falling apart, it's the first indication that things could go south, especially if the anarchists continue to sustain their drama. I mean, it's one thing to have a riot that lasts a couple hours. It's another thing to have a sustained conflict that lasts days, weeks, months, and even years.
Yeah, for sure. So before I ask my next question, I just want to make sure, clarify things here. My understanding is regardless of the setting, that as soon as Delta Force shows up, they have full operational control over every other agency. Is that correct?
Well, they are the national mission force that executes their objectives based on the command of the President of the United States. That's typically disseminated down to JSOC and the commander of the unit, which is just an 06. But the commander of JSOC is a general. So for sure, when they take over, if they're given operational control, then they're in charge. Gotcha.
Okay, appreciate that. So, because that leads right into this question. So, in a multi-city crisis like 9/11 2.0, who has the authority to coordinate the response? Is it strictly from the president directly, or are there competing jurisdictional rules here?
No, I think when you have a national crisis, it's going to be the commander-in-chief in charge in a situation room managing the conflict with generals, directors that are disseminating it and giving, like an example is this Venezuelan capture of Maduro. The president wasn't calling the shots on the ground. That operational control was given to the ground force commanders on the ground. And so you'll see the overarching strategy being managed by the situation room with the president, but all the tactical elements that are maneuvering are meeting the commander's intent. And in this case, the commander isn't the commander's intent from JSOC or from Delta. It's going to be the objectives that the president of the United States has.
So I don't know if you can speculate on this or not, but all of these bad guys now under this Islamic army banner, being supported by Qatar and, training in Afghanistan, would it be feasible to declare war against any of those countries? And now we're fighting them. The battlefield is here, so then we can have a proper military response?
Now, the sovereign countries, governments are likely not going to take the blame and fall on the sword. It's going to be a campaign and fight against rogue elements. I mean, none of these countries are stupid enough to take credit for anything that's going on. Especially, I mean, Qatar was an ally in the GWAT. I mean, most of the terrorists on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia, and they're an ally in the global war on terror. And so you're always going to see the fallout of extremism on the fringes, likely never the institution. That's an easy problem to solve in a general campaign. The insurgency is the difficult one.
So does the Insurrection Act then give the executive, the ability to deploy military assets regardless of posse comitatus?
Oh yeah, for sure. The gloves will be off, and you'll need those assets, and there'll be ground force, active duty military units all over the country. I mean this will not be a situation managed by the local or state National Guard.
Okay, so next question, because you're so tuned in on the tactical side of things. When this goes down, what breaks first? Manpower, communications, or leadership?
So it's hard to tell because seemingly many of these things break at the same time. I think one of the things that's likely to break is communication, because that's what the insurgency is going to try to combat the most. I mean, if they break communication, they break command and control. And so what you're likely to see is simultaneous insurgent tactics being utilized against infrastructure, including communications, because they want to cut the umbilical cord and have these guys free running. I mean, you cut a military unit off from communications from any headquarters element, and there's going to be chaos.
I haven't heard a whole lot of people discuss this, Mike, but do you think that the Chinese have loaded up these jihadis with frequency jammers so they can block cell phones and other types of frequencies for communications?
I think they have all the tech, with the exception of the tech that interferes with their country. And so they're going to have standalone devices that can do all the things: exploitation, infiltration, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They'll have it all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking for the people who aren't into comms, like if you jammed, all of the cell phone frequencies, that's not going to affect things like comms with Starlink, Iridium through Garmin's. Those are still functional. So
you'd be localized.
Yeah, they could very well still be in touch with their command and control for sure. So let's go into segment number 2, Mike, and I titled it Sanctuary Strongholds, the Patchwork Nation. So in the middle of chaos, some jurisdictions will declare themselves sanctuary if they haven't already, for certain categories of people or behavior, and that turns emergency response into a political loyalty test instead of a public safety mission. And federal agencies will still move, but cooperation becomes conditional. Local prosecutors decline cases. Local police get told to stand down, and the rule of law becomes like a menu where leadership applies, whatever they choose for that particular day. And the result is this patchwork nation where one city runs checkpoints and arrests, and the next city blocks detainers and shields offenders, and citizens are forced to navigate this set of competing rules with life or death consequences. Why did these leaders, Mike, why in your opinion, did these leaders double down on sanctuary policies during crisis instead of pausing them?
Chaz is a great example of what took place outside of Seattle, and that backfired completely because all these guys who are on the ground insurgents are radical, and it's going to be Lord of the Flies. They don't care about any policies that are being disseminated, even through law enforcement. They'll create their own enforcement of whatever legal framework they've set forth. So I think, one, politically, politicians won't even play a role at some point because all the command and control elements on the wrong side of the bad side of this are just going to be Lord of the Flies. It's going to be whoever has the most guns and the most weight on the streets, and they could care less what the politician is disseminating on their press releases on X.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going back to your specialty, really, like in the trenches, what does non-cooperation from local law enforcement look like on the street level? Not the press conferences, but actually as things unfold. Will they stand there with their thumb up their ass while bad guys are killing good guys?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been proven. I mean, we saw it in the BLM Antifa riots in recent history, and nobody paid any consequences for it. We have qualified immunity. None of them could be sued. There's a Uvalde officer who's been charged with 29 counts of child endangerment because he failed to go into the room knowing that 19 children were going to be killed, or knowing at least that they were in harm's way, and he'll likely get off. I'm tracking the case very closely. He'll likely get off because of qualified immunity and because there's no case precedence that says otherwise. And so a law enforcement officer is sworn by an oath, but that oath is not legal framework for them to actually do anything. And so either they're going to listen to the politician and not do anything, and if they do decide to do something, it's going to be because of an individual's moral compass, and likely will be illegal because he'll be going against his own chain of command. And so I've always said this, especially in these kind of situations, this chaos, worst case scenario, many of them that I know would abandon their posts because their focus is going to be protecting their families. They can't afford to hang out in the streets and do nothing when the city's burning.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So what do you foresee as the most dangerous gap created by sanctuary policies after the 9/11 2.0 attacks start?
Sustaining and protecting communities for the long haul. Like, insurgents don't just kickstart and go away. I mean, we saw what happened with the fight in Iraq, where loyalists to Saddam Hussein that managed to get away started ISIS. So if you think about that, it's like, yeah, there will be lulls, but don't let a lull in the fight fool you, because for sure they will reset, re-equip, reorganize, and come back stronger than they were before. So we're not prepared for a long fight. We're prepared for skirmishes, for active shootings, for present case scenarios, but we're not prepared for a campaign over the long haul.
I got to ask you a question, Mike. Is your fur baby addicted to Carnival like ours are? The Carnival dog treats?
My fur baby's in training right now, but he almost bankrupted me with all the Carnival stuff that I was using. I mean, he started eating like the premium bags, which is the same, because that stuff's just the leftovers and the pieces that are too small.
Right.
He started eating like normal Carnival, which is you need that coupon code.
This can is empty, right? Because my dogs go crazy over it. But our female rescue, who was used as a bait dog, when we got her, she was horribly damaged. She's turned out to be a beautiful dog. Mike, she comes into my office at least 10 times a day and licks this can. It's absolutely, for those of you who don't know, carnival.com, they're our premier sponsor. They help us defer a bunch of expenses.
I had that for breakfast this morning.
The
not the dog version,
the dog treats,
the people version. It's the same. I mean, it's just a smaller cut. It's the leftover residual cuts of it. So they're getting top sirloin.
Yeah, Mighty Meat Mike Glover treats. Kind of rhymes, maybe not. Use code EATMEAT, all one word, to get 10% off. And by the way, their price increase takes effect on the 15th of the month. They're just passing on an increase in their wholesale price. But if you sign up for a subscription right now, they cannot change that price once you're signed up in many jurisdictions. So whatever you sign up for your monthly subscription for the first 12 months locks your price in We had a meeting with the owners of Carnival last week. 49%, Mike, can you believe this? 49% from the first week of January last year to the first week of January this year, increasing their wholesale prices. We're going to get to the point where beef's going to be like unaffordable.
Yeah, it's insane. I track it too on many levels because I have cows,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a problem.
Yeah. So anyway, carnival.com, I'm telling you, it's an awesome company. Mike and I both love their food. So let's go into segment 3, which I titled Intel Blackouts, Warrant Games, and Safe Corridors. So the real operational damage, it's not theoretical. It's intelligence sharing, task force cooperation, warrant execution, all of this stuff getting slowed down or blocked because agencies are told to stop trusting each other and refuse to support each other. So then you've got enforcement turning into, well, these are our rules versus their rules. And fugitives and extremists, they exploit the gaps. They move through friendly jurisdictions. They've already been doing this in all these sanctuary cities, hide behind policy barriers and force federal teams to work blind or late. And this is why terror networks love disorder, because a divided response turns one attack wave into a rolling crisis, and the public pays for it with longer chaos, more copycats, and more street level violence. Mike, I know you have intimate knowledge of this stuff. Explain what the JTTF is and what happens to JTTF style cooperation when a city flat out refuses to cooperate.
Yeah, the Joint Terrorism Task Force is a task force that includes federal agencies, interagencies operating with local law enforcement officers. They'll deputize many of these officers to become federal agents and work in conjunction with them. And I've seen it divide departments because, people are jealous of the authorities they have and the cool, sexy operations they're doing. And they often get permission to do things like go after terrorists, do raids, and do high-speed things that local patrol officers don't often get the opportunity to do. So if you have a agency that refuses flat out, either the chief or the sheriff, to operate with a Joint Terrorism Task Force, that's typically not a problem because you'll just move adjacent or just do it unilaterally, do it by yourself. But it would cause chaos if none of the officers by mandate were cooperating with these agencies and it became a rift. There's already a rift, by the way. I mean, there's always a rift between federal agencies interoperating with each other. That could be FBI to CIA or FBI to DHS, as well as the local component. I mean, the idea is obviously a local law enforcement officer is policing his own community. And then these guys from JTTF come in and they hit these targets and they cause all this chaos. And the fallout is typically left with the local law enforcement officers who have to pick up the pieces. That analogy or that example has been seen in my career, working with task force, with Delta or with Special Operations Command and going into battle spaces and going after bad guys in those battle spaces, typically owned and managed by the big army. And so you're going to have a conflict. The conflict already exists. It's going to exacerbate the conflict and potentially cause infighting, even physical infighting, if it gets crazy.
So that just brings up a thought. How do you run manhunts when all the local people aren't providing you any cooperation, no intelligence, no information, no nothing? They're just stymieing you.
It's difficult, but I mean, typically field agents, for example, in the FBI have their own assets. They have their own human network. They have SIGINT capability above and beyond the capabilities of local law enforcement that they could tap into. And so it's not really a problem. I mean, most local law enforcement officers tap into federal assets and systems in order to prosecute or exploit, target, and identify where these guys are at.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As you're saying that, actually, just another question popped into my head. Can we bring, or will we bring ISR drones at such a high altitude that people on the ground can't see them to aid in these types of manhunts, or is that for just other types of purposes?
No, they will, for sure. I mean, Northcom has assets to bear to be able to utilize, any kind of ISR platform, SIGINT platforms, commercial aircraft with SIGINT equipment to be able to get this done.
Oh, that's interesting. I'd never heard that, never contemplated that before. So before we move into the next segment, describe what you think a safe corridor will look like for criminals, jihadis during a multi-city emergency. I mean, they're going to exploit whatever they can, right? But what does that look like as far as the protections afforded them?
Well, they already have underground means of supply, exfiltration, communications for sure. Covert communications is something that these guys are experts in. So they already fly under the radar. For them to be able to, for example, escape, they have decoy cars, they have disguises, they have ways to mask their signature, physically, signal intelligence wise. So it's not going to be difficult because they do it already to avoid detection for criminal prosecution. So when shit hits the fan, it's going to be a turnkey kind of infrastructure.
All right, I appreciate that. So let's get into segment 4. There's 5 segments as per usual. So I titled this one, What Families and Churches Do When the System Splits. So when the system fractures, normal Americans can't outsource safety to political leaders. You have to tighten your own plan, know your local rules, and build layered security without looking for permission. Start with basics that scale: situational awareness, hardened routines, medical readiness, and simple comms plans for your household and your church community, because confusion is what gets people trapped. Then move to coordination, connect with trusted neighbors, document incidents, avoid hotspots, and keep a calm moral center, because panic and pride are the 2 fastest ways to lose control of a bad night. What is the first practical step, Mike, for a family that's living in one of these sanctuary jurisdictions?
Have a sit down with a friend or family member that you trust to figure out how you're going to coordinate it. The idea of going into your church and saying, hey guys, I want to start this worst case scenario group. Everybody's going to tell you to pound sand. The pastor's not going to support it. They don't even support local security teams for churches, let alone a worst case scenario statistical anomaly they would describe. They're not going to do it. So being in a living room, sitting down with the people that you love and having the conversation is the first step.
And get out of Dodge if you can, like if you have an actual destination.
Maybe. I mean, if you have power and numbers and supply and being able to hard point because you have the equipment and the assets, potentially the training, even the resources, you might not go anywhere. I don't need to go anywhere in my situation because I have all the resources to bear. And if somebody gets in my way, I'll take their resources. Most people will be passive and compliant to being terrorized. That's how it works. They will line up to die. I mean, that's how it works throughout history. I will not be. And so if you have strong leadership, strong experience, the assets and the equipment, then bugging in might be better than bugging out.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We've touched on that many times, especially if people don't have anywhere to get to. So you touched on churches already, but what role should churches play in communication and just general local support during a crisis? Like not going to them and saying, hey, we need to set up for this, but after the thing happens.
Look, I as somebody who owns a church, who has a nonprofit that is a church, Unshaken Community Church, I think it's a pipe dream to think that your local church is thinking the same way you are. Your pastor might be squared away, but is he going to vocalize any pre-plans or conversations? Even after the fact, is he going to be an asset or resource for shelter, for security, for stockpiling? Maybe. If God calls him, maybe he'll step up. I'm not taking that chance to convince anybody otherwise. I'm going to prepare in advance. And then, like I said, I'll take your church over. I'll move into your church because it's a great place to set up and then communicate to your people, whether you like it or not, how this is going to happen. And again, not to sound like a dickhead, but you have to be definitive about how you're going to set forth your defense and your strategy moving forward in these worst case scenarios. There is no time for indecision. There is no time for passivity where you're trying to convince somebody otherwise. You have to go in. If you have the conversation, that's fine. Hey, pastor, this is what I'm thinking. And if he says no, it's like, all right, well, go ahead and pack your bags and get out. I'll talk to your people and try to sort this out. Because if you don't want to be invested in supporting your community or our community, then somebody has to. And again, that's why the best rule of thumb is to have these conversations in advance, because typically after the fact, people are past fear and impending doom, past the anxiousness, and they're completely locked up. They're in freeze phase of fight or flight.
Got you. I got to get you up on the other stage here because I have a very, very important question to ask our audience. So let me get Mike up here. So when Mike's talking about running his church and we're looking at a Teotihuacan situation, the end of the world as we know it, other than Mike not being quite as dark, do you think he could pass for Father Gabriel from The Walking Dead? If the answer is yes, put a 1 in the live chat. I mean, that's pretty close, Mike. I mean,
wrong continent. We're from different continents.
Yeah. So next question for you, Mike, is, and you've seen this happen in urban centers during your military career, what are the top mistakes people make during these types of, events when the shit's hitting the fan?
Number one, they hesitate. They hesitate to make any decision, and that indecision gets them killed. Number two, they don't prepare, not just stockpiling, but having the conversations, having the guns, having the ammo, having a plan. And I would say number three, they don't have the experience, the wherewithal, or the training to put a plan into place. I mean, I'm going to, in a month, talking to a group of ranchers that deal with catastrophe and contingencies all the time. I have a plan to build out and up their technical experience in planning to make it so they have more resilience in their protocols, but they're a subgroup of culture that is used to things going wrong. And so most people don't fall into that category because they're not ranchers. So I think, experience goes a long way. And I'm not saying you have to have experience in the military, but you have to have experience in working through adversity in some way.
Yeah, a great answer. So do you remember a few years back when we were filming Surviving Man, and I said, hey, Mike, you've been in the survival prepping industry for a long time, and I got to ask you a question. And you said, go ahead. And I said, after I acquired Survival Dispatch, I said, here's my opinion, is that the survival prepping audience wants to learn, as long as it's not a heavy lift, with a sprinkling of entertainment. Do you remember that conversation? Okay. It leads to a legit question here. What does Train Like It Matters look like for the average household?
It means getting up when you don't want to get up, when you're uncomfortable, rehearsing, involving your family, making it a family affair, despite the pushback that you might get. It means being a man, a biblical man of faith, and leading your family like a man. Many men aren't men because they go to work. Guess what? That's implied. That's called an implied task. The specified task is you get off your ass and you lead your family by being proactive. And most people are not proactive.
So I had a meeting with Vets Tactical, our friend Craig Washburn and Greg Wasatch yesterday, because we're doing this thing at SHOT Show where the capolster is basically mounted to the special chair that Craig had made to simulate sitting in your truck. And then there's going to be smart targets with the Mantis training gun, the new Titan X pistol, where people have to pull it, draw, and shoot on the interactive thing, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And you came up in the conversation, and tell the truth, because I already ratted on you. I told Greg, and he laughed his ass off. How many of these do you eat in a good day?
I just told him today I needed a resupply because I eat 5 a day. I legitimately, that's legit. He said, "Are you feeling better?" Because, you know, I told him I was eating super clean, and part of eating clean is actually eating carnivore every morning with eggs. And I'm basically carnivore, for the exception of sourdough bread every once in a while, baked down the road. And he said, "You should feel better in a couple of days." And I said, "Greg, I've been eating 5 a day for the last 3 weeks." I was like, I felt great 2.5 weeks ago, and I apologize, but I'm going to need a resupply. And he said, "How much or which flavors do you like?" And I said, "All of them." It was my response.
So I've been telling the Survival Dispatch audience, most of the flavors are really good, but the dill pickle is terrible. Do not buy the dill pickle. That will be my cross to bear. I will look after the dill pickle. Don't buy dill pickle.
Those were gone on day 3.
This is no joke, by the way. Just like our dogs are addicted to the carnival dog treats, all of us now in our, circle are highly addicted to Wasatch Wagyu's Wagyu jerky. These strips are so pliable. Yeah, I told you, I started making sandwiches out of them. My wife's like, "Really? Seriously, you're making sandwiches out of jerky?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." Then she says to me, "Well, we should probably start putting them on charcuterie boards." And I mentioned it to Greg. Greg's like, "Yeah, we do that every Saturday at the farmer's market. That's how we get people hooked on the crack cocaine."
That's how they get them hooked. It's man, I don't need the board. Just give me the. I mean, I don't even rip them down. I just grab it with my teeth and just rip it open. They don't even last. It's funny because they don't even. I open them in the kitchen, and by the time I get to the second floor, they're already gone. I take one
That's
for
so
the trip.
That's too funny. WasatchWagyu.com. And they gave us a special code SD25 to get 25% off, but it expires tomorrow. So you
that's
guys
good. That's 25%. That's good.
Damn skippy it is. Yeah. So SD25 gets you 25% off. Wasatch Wagyu. The strips are the bomb. If you all end up making them sell out of dill pickle, I'm going to be very, very upset, because that now constitutes 90% of my protein intake. Well, 80%, the other 20% is carnival. But anyway.
They're like 7 grams of protein per stick too, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Did he tell you that he's bringing out beef ones, like regular? I'm trying to remember the cattle, Holsteins. He's bringing out some Holstein jerky as well, in addition to
it will reduce cost, and it will be more effective because you can get it. I mean, you can just buy them in bulk. It'd just be a lot, because Wagyu is high in fat content.
That's right.
And it has a low yield, and it's just it's a supply demand issue. That's why it's so expensive. And I think that's very smart of him to do.
Yeah, for sure. So moving into segment number 5, I titled it "Restoring Order, Accountability, and a Christian Response." So America can't function as a country if mayors, prosecutors, and governors decide which laws apply based on ideology, because that replaces justice with faction power and invites more violence. So accountability matters, clear authority matters, honest standards matter, because when leadership rewards lawlessness and punishes enforcement, you train the public to hate order and to protect predators. A Christian response is not passive. It's not turn the other cheek. It's a sober, lawful, and protective defend the innocent, refuse moral confusion, prepare your household, and demand leadership that treats justice like a duty and not a talking point. I got a question for you, Mike, that I didn't put in the brief, but in your words, could you dispel this myth that as Christians we're supposed to roll over and die every time somebody attacks us?
Yeah, I don't. This passive look. Jesus rolled into places and flipped tables. He was not a pacifist. He did not tolerate nor turn a blind eye to immorality or just the consequence of not doing anything. He was a man of action. And I think when you think about Christians as a whole, most of the flack that we get is based on our judgment. I agree in many ways that Christians tend to be the most judgmental in comment sections and threads on social media, which I'm never in, because I don't care to give my opinion about everything that's going on in the world, because I care about living a virtuous life, not just virtue signaling one. And so I think a lot of the issues that we have as Christians is we're not walking the walk. We're not walking the walk that Jesus walked. If we were, we'd be getting it done. And, you know, the Sermon on the Mount is a great example of him getting it done. It wasn't in a steeple. It wasn't in a temple that cost millions of dollars. It was getting out on the streets and talking to everybody. And it was leading. There's a reason that picture depicted in many forms of him at the Last Supper. He's center. He's the focal point of that painting, but also of that meeting, breaking bread with his apostles. I think it's very important for men to recognize their place, to appropriately have the conversations with their loved ones about that role and responsibility. That's very biblical and can be technical if you wanted to, but also just being a man that walks the walk. And so many men spend more time on social media than they think about proactively leading their families. And that's a problem. If you're on the shitter, if you're in your car, in your truck, and your mind is distracted by everything going on in the world on Instagram, then you're not leading your family for sure. Stop being a weak coward and put down your cell phone and lead your family in real life.
Yeah, good job, Mike. Very, very well said. So I'll just ask you one more question on this final segment, and then we'll wrap it up with the conflict of question. What does real accountability look like after the shit hits the fan and people like Jacob Frey and Tim Walsh and Gavin Newsom and what's that clown's name, Brandon Johnson and Mom Dami and all these guys thumb their nose at the feds and protect all these criminals? What does accountability actually look like, and are we ever going to see it, or is that just a pipe dream?
Well, accountability, according to me, in my own heart and head, I won't even advertise here because we'll never see it. We'll likely never see justice served as these crooked, corrupt politicians deserve. However, I am hopeful, because they are breaking the law. I mean, you can put all the things they're doing in ChatGPT, which is just looking at the technicalities of case law and legal precedent, and they're breaking the law across the board in many ways. The same things that me and you would do, we'd end up in county jail, and they're doing, again, I'm watching live Minnesota Governor Walsh holds news conference where he's basically blaming ICE, telling people that in a way that everything that happened today was wrong and criminal, and the terrorists are the federal officers that are protecting our communities because he lacks the courage to do so himself. Instead, he's facilitating terrorism in his own backyard and taking taxpayers' money, including you and me's taxpayer money, because it's federally funded, in 9, 10, 20 billion dollars. The estimate is between 9 and 20 billion dollars of corruption. So that dude, in my opinion, in seeing justice, should be sitting in prison. Will that happen? I don't know. If shit truly does hit the fan and it's complete chaos, there might be some vigilante justice from patriots who decide it's time to stop talking the talk and they walk the walk. It won't be me, because I can give two shits about Minnesota. or what's going on in downtown Minneapolis and the Somali community, I'll be holding and locking down my own community in my own backyard.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of can wrap this episode up, at least this main topic, put a bow on it, just train like your life depends on it, because it does at the end of the day.
Because it may very well be the case in the near future.
Yeah, there's nobody coming to rescue you, period, full stop. The days of outsourcing your security are long gone now, I would say. But Mike, this has turned into my favorite part of the podcast, as you know, so I'll let her rip here. 3, 2. All right, the Carnival Hero of the Night. I don't know if you had a chance to look through the brief here, Mike, but this is pretty amazing. This is Ellie. She noticed her humans kayaking without her, so she launched a full-blown rescue operation. 0 hesitation, 14 out of 10, hero instincts, 40 seconds. This is badass, Mike.
All right, she's coming to rescue us.
Watch what she does here.
Okay, she's got the rope and she's looks like she's Go, Ellie!
She swam out there for this rescue mission, Mike, and drug him back to shore.
I thought he was going to jump on the boat and then overturn it.
Right. Well, so it looks like there's a mother and a young kid, another dog maybe on the boat. But yeah, rescue mission here. Tell me that's not freaking awesome.
I love dogs.
That is, yeah, same here. That is just,
to rescue us.
That is so awesome. So let's head on over to our conflicted question of the night. So after the collapse of society, the federal government started a relocation program. They said they would coordinate people's skills and abilities and ship them to different parts of the country according to what they could do for their country. If your government were to try and relocate you and your neighbors, would you embrace this idea, or would you go against the government's orders and stay where you are? Why? You go ahead and take first swing at this one, Mike.
So the government can pound sand. I'm not relocating for anybody. And if they try to move me, there's going to be serious consequences for that. And I mean it. The idea of the government, one, locking me down or trying to relocate me anywhere. I don't care about history. I mean, I know history with the Native Americans, with the Japanese internment camps. I know all that. I'm talking about me specifically, not the Japanese, not the Native Americans, me and the values that I hold near and dear that align with the Constitution and the founding fathers of this country over my dead body.
So I'm glad you mentioned the Constitution, because clearly this would be something that is very unconstitutional. I've never asked you this question before, but I'd love to hear you speculate on it. If we had a true tyrant in office who ordered our military, to manhandle or potentially harm or kill our fellow Americans, and it was a grossly illegal activity, what percentage of people in our military would comply versus what percentage do you think would say, pound sand?
I think a lot of them would comply. I think groupthink is part of psychology assessments for a reason. It's because a lot of people that belong to institutions can justify any means based on their role in an institution or a group of people that are doing something for, in air quotes, the greater good. And so it will be a huge problem. And I think that will be where the rubber meets the road. And I think you said if, I think it's when, because the pendulum has swung all the way to the right, and it will eventually swing all the way to the left.
Truth.
In a more extreme way than you've ever seen. It will make the idea of January 6th being an insurrection look like elementary school compared to the complexities of getting your PhD, with all of the drama that will be going on that we will have to deal with here probably potentially in the next presidential cycle, which will potentially be corrupt and crooked as all could be.
Man, I'm glad that you brought up the whole pendulum swing, because for those in our audience who don't know, I come from high tech. programmer since I was a kid, basically a network engineer, systems engineer before I moved into being an executive. But I'm still deeply involved in technical stuff to this day. So, Mike, I mentioned to you that I have a concern, I should say, that people like you and me are, at some point in the not too distant future, they're probably going to have people in power going to go back to deplatforming us, suppressing us, censoring us, all that crap. So I went and took an open source project called Element. Element is built on the same code base as Signal. The difference being is that when you take Element and you put it on your own server, you can have your entire community encrypted, no censorship. It's your own platform, essentially. So I built an Element server that can handle 200,000 people. By default, Signal, by the way, is limited to 1,000 people per room, but long before you get there, it kind of shits the bed. So we've called it SDNet, and everybody who signs up as a Survival Dispatch Guardian gets access to all of our channels. We're up to about a dozen channels in there. We've got a women's only channel now. We've got survival prepping channels. We cover everything. We've got an intel channel called Threatwire. We've got a general bullshit chat. That general bullshitting, by the way, generates 12,000 plus messages per week in just the Guardian chat room out of all of them. It's only $7.99 a month or $79.99 a year. I don't know if I told you this or not, Mike. We did a test of the Survival Dispatch emergency notification system a couple weeks back. And, you know, EBS, the emergency broadcast system, went down in 31 states a few weeks ago. And it just boggled my mind that the feds could have something so antiquated that when it goes down, they're like dead in the water sort of thing, right? When we sent out an SDENS emergency notification, a test one, it went to everybody's POC-Link radios who has them, and you're familiar with POC-Link. It, by the way, I just let the cat out of the bag here. Mike and I just found out today they have the next generation of radios ready for testing, not for general consumption. And they're adding Wi-Fi to the POC-Link radios. So they'll have regular analog FRS, which is basically GMRS minus 6 channels, LTE, and in addition to that, Wi-Fi calling as well. We lost your video, Mike. But anyway, my point is that the SDENS emergency notifications go to the POC-Link radios. They go to our Substack. They go to people's email. They go to the SDENS channel on our Signal chat. They go to the SDENS channel now on our new Element server. And with very few exceptions, Mike, everybody in the community got the notification in a couple places out of all those. So I mean, you have a background in this, trying to get the word out to people when the shit hits the fan and maybe short circuit that. What do you call it? Like when people freeze, basically. And that's really when they should be making a move, right? When the writing's on the wall that things are getting bad, don't sit around with your thumb up your ass, like get to stepping, right?
Yeah, disseminated emergency comms, especially when infrastructure is being affected, even overloaded with communications. That's typically when you see infrastructure shutting down. To be able to communicate in mass specific things that are happening on emergency comms is super important, because it's your E in your PACE plan, it's your emergency in your PACE plan. Yeah. But in some cases like this would be your primary means of communications, because like you've seen it before on 9/11, nobody could communicate because everybody was sending out a text or voice, and it shut down all the cell phone infrastructure.
So as you know, shortwave, high frequency stuff, it bounces off the ionosphere. So it changes based on solar activity, daytime, nighttime, all those sort of things. Would it surprise you to learn that Dr. Mike and I, you know, all the work we've been doing with this kind of equipment, we've got a package together that's $800 all in. We don't sell hardware. It's just a list to go buy stuff elsewhere that will allow people in the eastern half of the country to hit everybody east of the Mississippi, and people who live in the western part of the country, everybody west of the Mississippi, for $800, regardless of what infrastructure is down, just up in the air. Our next comms video will truly be like an epic, I'm trying to think of the right word, encyclopedia of this stuff, because as you said, comms are so important. When everything goes down, what do you have left as a private individual? Shortwave HF, right, Mike? Because we can't have all the fancy toys you guys got in the military. We don't get the $20,000 Harris radios. Although it wouldn't hurt my feelings if somebody donated one to me, other than the fact that they're against the law for private citizens to have. But anyway, Mike, as per usual, appreciate your insight and your time very, very much. We went a little bit long tonight. I apologize for that. The rest of us will be back tomorrow night, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series, the new Mason-Dixon line. And we'll have the sit rep out by noon tomorrow. You can check it out on our Substack, survivaldispatch.news. Want to thank all of our Guardian subscribers and our sponsors. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to work the hours that I do. My team wouldn't be able to work the hours they do. There are a bunch of people behind me in Survival Dispatch that nobody ever sees, like Grace McCutcheon, my editor, for example. And it's not a one-man show, far from it. But so I want to thank everybody in the team, of course. But this is Chris Evans signing off. God bless America. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our military and our troops that we appreciate so much. Enjoy the closing video.
Maintain altitude. Target confirmed inside residence.
Godspeed. Let's do it.
All units, authorization is green. City grid is down. Fence breached. You're clear. Move. Target secured. Copy. Heading home.